Hi there. So when we talk about Project 2025, and it's pretty dystopian, if I may say so myself. It depends on what your belief systems are. I tend to lean more on the side of everyone should have a voice and everyone should be able to live their lives in their own way, right? If they're not hurting anyone, blah, 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 blah. But what I do want to get into now for the next series is who's all there? Who are all the people invited to the party? When you get invited somewhere, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but the first question I ask is where. The next question is usually something about what time, because after a certain age, you need to know what time things are. And then who's going to be there? Who's going to be there? So let's talk about who's going to be there. So we're going to move on down the road and kind of get into who all is going to be there, right? When someone invites you to a party, there's about 3 questions that we all ask. One, where is it going to be? Who's hosting it? Next is what time? And third is who all going to be there? Because that's important, right? So when we talk about who's all going to be impacted by Project 2025, the conservative mandate, the mandate for leadership, the manifesto from the Heritage Foundation, however you want to say it, doesn't really matter. So we're going to just talk a little bit about who's all going to be there. First, we're going to start with the Department of Defense. That is our military, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and I'm not sure if the Space Force ever took off, but it's mentioned in there. So definitely the Department of Defense, the Department of Homeland Security is also mentioned in here. Okay, that is where Immigration Enforcement, Border Patrol falls under the Department of Homeland Security. The Department of State, State Department. Okay? We're even going after the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Like, that also includes NPR. Yeah, they're going after NPR. Let's keep going. The Department of Agriculture. Why is the Department of Agriculture even important in this conversation? Because that is literally the department by which farmers, livestock, our food supply comes through. The Department of Education. And that's been getting a lot of attention lately. So yes, the Department of Education is definitely on the chopping block. The Department of Energy and related commissions. The Environmental Protection Agency. The Department of Health and Human Services, and we have been talking about this a lot, but the Department of Health and Human Services definitely is on this list. The Department of Housing and Urban Development. Yeah, it's kind of interesting for a lot of reasons, but yes, they're on the list. The Department of the Interior. The Department of Justice is also on this list. The Department of Labor. You know, that stuff that EEOC, those guidelines, DEI initiatives, diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, the anti-discrimination initiatives, yeah. That's on the chopping block too. The Department of Transportation. Because we know what happens when we completely privatize transportation. Boeing, I'm sorry, that was petty. You all can edit that out if you need to. Boeing, Boeing, by the way, if you want the spelling of Boeing. The Department of Veterans Affairs. How many of you have loved ones or are a service member or a retired service member? And thank you for your service, by the way. But we're going to talk about what the Heritage Foundation thinks about your service, and especially what should happen when your service has elapsed. The Department of Commerce. That's interesting. the Department of the Treasury, because we definitely got issues with the Department of Treasury, including the Federal Reserve and the Small Business Administration. And then we got some regulatory agencies that we're going to talk about, including the Federal Communications Commission, the Election Commission, and the Federal Trade Commission. So essentially, almost every aspect of government, every federal agency, it seems, is going to be impacted by Project 2025. Let's buckle up. All right, so let's talk a little bit about who's going to be there, because it's very important when we talk about this document. This it's something. It's a something that many of the contributors of Project 2025 are very, very smart people. Very smart people. Many of them are practicing attorneys, professors, medical doctors, and some former elected officials. So one of the things that happens with this often in spaces, especially in progressive spaces, is that it's just dismissed as, oh my God, these are just a bunch of crazies who wouldn't, no. These are very smart people. Several of the individuals in there are Rhodes Scholars. Many of them have Ivy League post-undergraduate education. A lot of them are fellows or have held postdoctoral fellowships. Many of them have worked on the Hill in congressional offices in a variety of capacities, including former elected officials. So when we talk about Project 2025, it's easy to dismiss it as this rogue document that's not going to go anywhere. But we really need to be careful that despite the fact that Project 2025 is a piping hot mess, and I'm not going to deny that. I'm not going to gaslight anyone on that. It's a piping hot mess. It is a piping hot mess written by extremely very smart people. Extremely and very smart people. And we have to be real about that when we discuss this, that we're not marginalizing this. We're not looking at this as just something silly or a campaign stomp speech that's just really completely out in left field. It's out in somebody's field. It is. But we also have to be aware that the contributors of this document are extremely smart people. Extremely smart people. So let's dive into this with our eyes wide open.